Joining us tonight, author, historian Doug Weed, former special assistant to President George H.W. Bush. Doug, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Lou.
These calls from this time from Congressman Bill Flores, Republican of Texas, asking the president's children to leave the White House in the middle of all of this. I mean, what's your reaction to that as a historian?
Before we get started, Lou, I just got to say this. I read your book, Putin's Revenge, and it was great. I haven't enjoyed a spy thriller like that since the Smiley's People trilogy of George Smiley. It was great.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's very kind.
Yeah, it's...
and you're right. Let's just talk about my book for that.
Well, you know, you've got a scene, and you've got scenes in there where you have Putin himself. Right. I didn't think that could be pulled off. That was brilliant. I've written probably 1,000 pages of memorandums to presidents of the United States. So when I read spy thrillers, I always get somewhere in the book where they, oh, that could never happen, and I can't finish it. But yours was superb. It was great.
Thank you very much. Getting back to Bill Flores and asking the president's children to leave the White House, or the president to shush them out of the White House. Your reaction?
Yeah, I think that the left for some time now has been trying to isolate the president, that was part of the Flynn thing, that they just want to keep him away from anybody else. He can't get anybody it took a long time to get some of the people appointed he wanted. And he trusts his son-in-law and his daughter. They're brilliant. They're competent. They've proven that they are. That trip to the Middle East was superb. That was a Jared Kushner production. Ivanka's superb. And this is not unprecedented.
Even if they were mediocre,
it's all through history.
You know, even if they're mediocre, they are, they're a support for their dad, the President of the United States. And I think it's a terrific thing. You can, I guess, find points where maybe yes or no they should have done or should not have done something. But the reality is the president has that opportunity to have the people he knows are with him, and that's his family. And I think it's important that he be able to have that in the White House.
And he's worked with them for years. They know each other. They can read each other's mind. And they are competent. And they're loyal. And they have continuity. You invest all this time with your boss when you work in the White House, and then he's out. But if you're a son or a daughter, you're going to go all the way to the end. And you know, if you tell them something, it's got staying power. So they do play a big role. That's why 18 sons served their father as president, beginning with John Adams, who appointed his 30-year-old son as minister to Prussia.
And that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, he became president.
Let's turn to this business of Feinstein today. Senator Feinstein talking about Robert Mueller, saying he won't object to public testimony by either Donald Trump Jr. or Paul Manafort. That seems to me to suggest a form of exculpation. I don't believe that Mueller would check off on that if he felt that anything meaningful would be compromised by their public testimony. I think that's good news for the administration. Do you not?
I do. I'm a little troubled by the fact that it just it looks like Mueller's just following around like a little puppy dog the national media. I'm hoping he has some independence to pursue things on his own. But I'm reminded by a quote of Napoleon. He said, "You shouldn't go to battle too often with the same opponent, because they'll learn your strategies and use them against you." And the Democrats and Republicans have been so obstruction to each other that now this investigation is stumbling into things that the Democrats have done and Russian collusion on their side. So it's getting kind of touchy.
Yeah, it looks like there's far more reality to the collusion charges with the Democrats and the Russians than any Republican and any Russian. We're joined tonight by Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton, who knows more than a thing or two about, well, the Clintons, the Russians, and collusion. Great to have you with us, Tom. And
good to be with you again, Lou.
As always, thanks for the great work that you and Judicial Watch do. A terrific organization without which the country would not be nearly as well served. Let's start with why in the world isn't there some investigation of what we know to be motivated behavior to avoid if you will, inflaming the Russians because they went after the servers of the DNC and our FBI, and the CIA just said, you know, that's okay, we'll just back off. We don't want to get anybody, excited about it.
Yeah, I would take a step further back, Lou. I don't know whether the Russians hacked the DNC. I know that's what we've been told by the Obama intelligence agencies. I don't know, maybe they hacked the DNC, but did they release the emails? WikiLeaks has suggested that they did not get the emails from Russia.
Right.
I don't know whether they're telling the truth or not, but certainly it's got to be taken into account. And, you know, I'm just so confused about what we're supposed to be believing now. So if you look at the email that
we're supposed to believe that Donald Trump and his campaign organization colluded with the Russians, even though we don't have a scintilla of evidence to that effect, and even though we have mountains of evidence to the fact that the Clintons and the Russians worked hand in glove, whether it's uranium ore, whether it is presidential speeches being paid for at the tune of about $500,000 an hour in Moscow.
Well, you have millions of dollars flowing into the Clinton Foundation from Russia interest, also money flowing directly into the personal coffers of Bill and Hillary Clinton while she was Secretary of State, while agitating against the sanctions move, and while promoting, from the same entity that was promoting the Uranium One stock that was really on the down, which is, was spiraling out of control downwards at the time Clinton was making his speech. But going back to this, what are we supposed to be concerned about? According to the Donald Trump Jr. email, the Russians wanted to talk, this is the theory, the Russians were colluding with Trump to talk about their collusion with Clinton, because they had dirt on Russians and the DNC. I can't make that work in my head. You know, maybe some here in Washington can, but it doesn't make sense. And when it doesn't make sense, I don't believe the underlying theory, which is that there was collusion of any substantive nature. But what I am concerned about is that maybe they were telling the truth. Maybe they thought there was information on DNC collusion with the Russians, and they were trying to convey it in a ham-handed way to Donald Trump Jr. I think that ought to be a subject of investigations. And, you know, my view is investigate everything. Make it clear that it's being done in an independent, serious, fair way, which you can't be done under the Mueller regime.
I don't know what to make about
all the truth out.
I can't even figure out what Bob Mueller is doing. Why would an attorney of his background and reputation, who's taken a charge to investigate collusion, not be straightforward with the American people and say there is no such legal charge as collusion? And what in the world are we to do anyway? Meanwhile, why is he loading up with a bunch of Dems and pretty strong donors to Democratic candidates at that? This is on its face a charade that looks like it's going to have evil consequences for some time to come if we give Mueller his head and free rein.
I don't know why he's investigating the meeting. The meeting may have been politically damaging to the Trump presidency right now. It doesn't raise any legal or any particular ethical issues. Certainly doesn't raise any legal issues, I can tell. And if the standard is there are legal issues for meeting with Russian nationals, then there are going to be a lot of people under investigation in this town. And as we point out, the Clinton campaign, the Clinton camp, and Mrs. Clinton personally, in terms of getting money directly from Russian interests while she's Secretary of State. It can't be, it'd be difficult to overstate the seriousness of that.
Yeah, why wouldn't 17 intelligence agencies be investigating that? We have the sort of the word of 3 of those, plus the DNI, that was Russian intervention with the DNC servers. But again, that's at the level of speculation because we haven't got evidence and we don't have any sure connection. But now it's become, as so many things have in this quote-unquote collusion episode, it's become fact just through repetition. It's really stunning stuff.
Well, compare and contrast what the all-hands-on-deck approach the Obama administration took to spying on President Trump and investigating the Russia connection, compared with what supposedly some lone FBI agents and a few active assistant U.S. attorneys were investigating the Clinton Foundation, and they couldn't get permission to do anything other than read newspaper clips.
By the way, Greg Jarrett, I just should point this out, last night pointed out to me on the Federal Election Commission. They make it very clear that volunteer work by a foreign national, including Russian, uncompensated work by a foreign national, including Russians, in a political campaign or as individual volunteers, by the way, is entirely permissible. Entirely permissible.
Well, this wasn't even volunteer work. These are meetings conveying information.
Yeah,
and if meetings conveying information are covered by FE, this is now what the left is arguing. The campaign finance laws were violated as a result of two people meeting to exchange information. It's a far cry from treason, and it certainly even ain't the law under their own ridiculous, absurd interpretation.
The point is that Russians could be supporting any candidate for president outright if they wanted to be, and within that, if they had discussions, it's not a transfer of value. It's a transfer of information as would be normal in the course of a campaign. I mean, the legal aspects of this thing become so ambiguous, even vaporous, as to be unhelpful. And then to have a special counsel pursuing collusion, which is not only, well, it's ambiguous, but it's also without definition in law as being a crime or something that can be even violated.
Right. What's the you know, he's investigating this meeting.
Tom,
what is the crime he's investigating?
You and I could keep this up all night. What's the
Amen.
crime? And we know what the crime is. The crime is that we have got a special counsel who was put there through the designs of a fired FBI director and a compliant Democratic and Republican Party in Congress. And there is part of the principal part of the shame. A few thoughts now on Republican leadership once again failing to deliver for President Trump. President Trump has to be disappointed to the extreme with these GOP leaders. Senate Majority Leader McConnell failing the president and his party on health care twice in less than 24 hours, despite having 7 years to prepare for this legislative moment.
We worked hard to provide them with a better way. We did so in the knowledge that this task would not be easy. We understood it would not come quickly.
I mean, can you believe that blather? And McConnell with that blather way slogan remark again. McConnell and Ryan apparently love that hollow, puerile slogan. As for the Speaker, he's boasting that he's proud the House was able to pass its own repeal and replace bill. He does look better thanks to McConnell in the Senate. Conflict, however, between McConnell and Ryan, not helpful to the Republican Party. But then neither is the Speaker nor the Majority Leader themselves. Of course, Ryan failed to garner votes for the bill back in March before it barely passed, then in May. That's certainly not a lot to crow about, but crow about it, Ryan did. A new analysis from The Week magazine shows some 238 bills have passed the House. They're currently held up in the Senate. Just 13 of those, however, we're told have even a 50% chance of reaching the president's desk, that according to GovTrack, and putting this Congress on track to be the most unproductive in nearly 165 years, an honor of their own making. And it's already taking a toll. A new Bloomberg survey shows just 34% of voters view Speaker Ryan favorably, a 13-point decline since December. And a recent Fox News poll showing McConnell's favorability has fallen to 25%. And now the two losing leaders have to be moved aside, in my opinion. They've been unhelpful, they've been ineffective, and they lack true leadership qualities and a quality leadership record. And they have no bond with President Trump nor his agenda. It is time they removed themselves or were simply removed from the top GOP legislative posts. Sean, I feel your frustration, your disappointment. What we have witnessed is a travesty. There's no sugarcoating this. But it's also an opportunity for the president to stand up and lead from here. Because Ryan has shown he is not the leader. He is as ineffective as you have described him, as disappointing. He has failed in his imagination. He's failed as the steward and the shepherd in the House of Representatives for many of the reasons that you cite, plus a host of others. This is a man who is Speaker, who has done nothing in 2 years, almost 2 years. He hasn't even been Speaker for 2 years. This is a man who's only passed 3 pieces of legislation in his entire career. We're talking about 18 years in Congress. He is emblematic of many of the failings of our Congress and our Senate, frankly. But this president has established a new norm. Stepping into the White House, he's working 24/7. He is.
Lou, I don't want to interrupt, but
No.
you're sparking more frustration. You look at the check.
Well, thank you for that.
You look at the checklist. He's kept promise after promise after promise after promise. He's building the wall. He's extreme vetting. He's fighting in the courts. He's getting rid of burdensome regulation. He wants to move forward with a bill that's going to create jobs. He's negotiating with companies. He's keeping companies here in America. He's remembering the forgotten men and women. They've had 8 years, Lou. 8 years.
And I listened to Congressman Mark Meadows, the chair of the
I feel
Freedom
bad for him.
Caucus. I listened to Jim Jordan. I listened to Senator Rand Paul. These are men who are working their tails off right now, actually in the president's behalf, trying to get to, as Mark Meadows says, to yes. But to finish the point, the Congress is working 1 week out of a month. Are you kidding me? This president is setting a new level of...
I work 18-hour days. I don't know what that's life is
like. What do most people watching this do?
Yeah.
I mean, who do these arrogant incompetents think they are? This leadership of this House for the Republican Party is setting a horrible example. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. I think it's time for him to get out of the way. And secondly, I think it's time for President Trump to acknowledge he's got to take on another burden. And he's got to lead the legislative agenda.
Well, that's my point. It's not his job,
It's
Lou.
not his job, but it is his country, and he's the only one who can save this country.
Am I wrong in saying that all these guys that didn't support the president during the election, I remember talking to the speaker, and I remember that the then candidate Trump was going with 3 weeks before the election to the state of Wisconsin, and Paul Ryan wasn't going to meet the nominee of his party.
He had finally agreed to campaign with him and canceled it. And in October, this is a man who has been anti-Trump, never Trump. And by the way, I don't know his motivation, and I don't care. But I'll tell you this, he has not supported the President of the United States, and that is appalling.
You agree with me, the President has not been served well. Is it wrong for me to expect that you don't hide the bill from your caucus, from your conference? They didn't show anybody, and there were all rumors flying around. Everybody was saying, then it gets released, and this group doesn't like it, that group doesn't like it. Aren't you supposed to, as a speaker, build consensus?
Absolutely, but you're also, as president, the only one of these people, everyone talks about they were elected to do this or that. This president was the only one elected by all of the people, and his vice president.
Can we say that, in other words, I talked to the vice president tonight, and I hope he doesn't mind me revealing this. And he believes, this is what he said. He said what the president, what Secretary Price wrote as a sidebar for stage 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is written in gold. That was the request of the Freedom Caucus. The vice president is standing by that promise, and he said
That's
1,000%.
That's terrific, except for one thing.
What?
The issue that has been before the President, the Speaker, and the House Freedom Caucus.
Can they get this done?
Is the 2 and 3, is it likely to happen? And they want 1.5 elements to move into the first phase. This business of phases was a tragic and stupid mistake on the part of the Speaker and his leadership team.
Okay.
And here's what I think.
But here's the problem. It's going to either die tomorrow or it's going to be fixed tomorrow.
I want to speak to that. Because the President of the United States may feel that way tonight, and I wouldn't blame him one damn bit. He has to be awfully disappointed in many of his advisors, his team, as well. He's got to be awfully disappointed in Speaker Ryan. But the choice in
I
this
think the words,
instance is
Lou,
not
are
his.
pissed off. He has a right to be pissed off.
That's a fair characterization. And I speak Irish, too. The fact is, this president doesn't have a choice. We're looking at $3 trillion in market cap that has moved because the people who elected President Trump have faith in him, his judgment, his leadership, his values, which are all American. And Americans and leaders never quit. I don't know what he's saying tonight, but tomorrow, those markets are not going to like to hear that the President of the United States said, I'm picking up my football and going home. That isn't Donald Trump. That is a disappointed and I'm sure angry as hell Donald Trump. But tomorrow, the leader that he is will emerge from the White House.
I don't doubt that either. All right, Lou, always good to see you.
Great.
Here's the bottom line. President Trump was not served well by his party in the House of Representatives, and he has been put in the position now to do their job and do all the heavy lifting on this bill. And it's no wonder that according to Real Clear Politics and their average, congressional approval is at an embarrassingly low 20.8%. So tonight, here we are. We find ourselves at a crossroad, at a stalemate. But we have a problem. In the legislative branch, it's a very, very different story. Now, the reason that we are here tonight in this position without a vote to repeal and replace Obamacare is because this legislative process has been beyond contentious, unorganized, and disjointed. You've seen the infighting, you've seen the miscommunication, you've seen the squabbles on TV, right here on Fox, on radio, all because the legislative branch did not do their job properly. Now, for 7 long years, the GOP ran on repealing and replacing Obamacare. They said, give us the House. They got that in 2010. They said, give us the House and the Senate. They got that in 2014. Then they said, give us the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And on November 8th, they got that wish. And frankly, in spite of many Republicans not even supporting the nominee of their party, which to me was nothing short of disgraceful. Now, in a perfect world, the work on repealing and replacing Obamacare, well, that would have begun on November 9th, but that didn't happen. And in a perfect world, the GOP would have built consensus among the different factions within the GOP, meaning the moderates, the conservatives, the Freedom Caucus, the study group, before ever unveiling the bill. That, too, never happened. Now, this bill was quickly labeled Ryan Care, Obamacare Light. President Trump, he didn't write this legislation, which, by the way, is not his job. So instead of ranting and raving, I'm thinking, all right, how do we solve this problem and fix this mess by tomorrow? Because my sources are telling me that the president, if he doesn't get this bill tomorrow, it's over for this session of Congress. My advice tonight for the legislative branch is to do what you should have done from the beginning. That is, bring a coalition of your party, all the different factions, bring them into a room, take away everybody's phones, lock the doors, order pizza, get some beer, whatever you need to survive for however long it takes. The meeting should include moderates, the GOP study group, the Freedom Caucus, members of the U.S. Senate, because we have to deal with the reconciliation and procedural issues. The White House should be represented, including the Vice President, the Health and Human Services Secretary. In other words, it's time to start working with a sense of urgency that most in America work with every day. It's time to fix this mess that you have made for the president. And it's time for you to give the American people a bill that you have now promised them for almost 8 years. Now, I would argue tonight, failure is not an option for the President of the United States and his first major piece of legislation. Now, if you don't succeed, you will have nobody to blame but yourselves. But at this hour, there's still time. There's hope for success. Now, Secretary Price, Vice President Mike Pence have both assured me that the president's letter to the Freedom Caucus is 100% locked in cement, and that those changes will be made in phases 2 and 3, which, by the way, we didn't find out about that till after the bill was released. And if not, by the way, I have it on very good authority, this health care bill will die in Congress tomorrow and will not be brought up this session. I was told by very high sources in government. Now, I'm arguing tonight that should not and cannot happen. And here's my message to you people in Congress. For the love of God, after 8 years, can you please do your job? Can you please find a way to work together? Can you please find a way to serve your country, not yourselves, not your reelection? It's time to serve your president and the people you represent. It's time for you to fix this and show the American people that they did the right thing by giving you the power and the authority to lead, because you don't look like you're leading right now. Joining us now with reaction, Fox News business anchor, our friend Lou Dobbs. Reaction. Now tonight also, James Rosen is reporting that sources are now telling Fox News there is potentially, quote, a smoking gun that proves the Obama administration spied on the Trump team.
I think the man is absolutely a disaster. He's become nothing less than a caricature as House Speaker. He's inept, and the conference, if they don't get rid of him, we're going to watch this nonsense go on in perpetuity.
You know, what's so frustrating, I know you have actually called for the Speaker to step down.
Absolutely.
And you're one of the few.
The House is so reticent to do the people's business, then let that fall on the heads of Paul Ryan and his leadership team, because they are absolutely deserving of accountability and blame.
Do you worry about, and maybe this is an artificial timeline,
right,
but you know, I know the media says the first 100 days. Reagan didn't get a lot of his bills through
right,
Congress until much later in the first year, but he got them through. Do you worry about a timeline or a window of opportunity that may close for the Republicans, because then we get back into an election cycle? Now, I would think the Republicans have some confidence. The Senate electoral map looks really good for them in 2018.
Correct. And I really believe that if Paul Ryan loses the House, that's on him. That's on this leadership team. President Trump will be president for 8 years, God willing. The electorate will assure that. Paul Ryan, his fate is in the wind. The conference should not put up with him. Mitch McConnell has done a job. He's delivered on what the president asked. He wanted Neil Gorsuch to be the Supreme Court Justice, and they've delivered. This is and you talk about Republicans, I do as well, every night on my broadcast. But you know, when we talk about Republicans, it's a coalition. It's not as loose as the coalition that makes up the Democratic Party, but it is a coalition. Paul Ryan is not a conservative, never has been. His leadership team is a mixed bag of conservatives, moderates. The Freedom Caucus are traditional conservatives and great Americans.
I agree.
All of
I agree. And here's the fascinating thing, and I can report with absolute authority that the people that had the urgency, that were working behind the scenes, and I know you know this because you and I stay in contact, so I tell you all my secrets. But you know how hard guys like Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan and all those Freedom Caucus guys, when the bill didn't get voted on that Friday, they started that next Saturday to try and help the president to get this over the finish line. They've compromised. They've worked with the varying coalitions within the House Republicans, you know, the Tuesday group, the study group, the more moderate Republicans, the drinking on Saturday night group. And, you know, we have a bill, and it's still not getting over the finish line tonight. It's so frustrating.
It's frustrating for you and for me, and as you say, I mean, Mark Meadows, you and I both know Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan for the great, first of all, great Republicans they are. I think either one of those two would make such a terrific speaker. I mean, they would be terrific in that role. Think about this. Donald Trump received 63 million votes in 2016 at the polls, and Paul Ryan received 230,000. And Ryan is talking about an agenda that he was elected on. Well, I mean, the man is delusional. I don't want to bring up recent history.
He also he said the president's a racist. He wouldn't be seen with him during the election. He said to me he supports his agenda. But my problem is, you know something, Lou? The people of this country, it shocked the world by voting for Donald Trump because they really want to change direction. The president, I would argue, has checked off every agenda item he possibly can that he can do on his own. These guys have wanted this power. 2010, give us the House. 2014, give us the House and Senate. 2016, they got the White House. And they're still, it's almost like impotent. They're incapable of getting this over the finish line.
But against the entrenched establishment power represented by Paul Ryan, let's be very candid here. He is the hired man for the Chamber of Commerce and for the Business Roundtable. He's emblematic of the establishment. Oh, he's not. It's not even close.
It's not even close. Lou, 95
Donald
million
Trump
Americans
is for the
are
people.
out of the labor force. 95 million Americans are out of the labor force, 50 million in poverty, 50 million on food stamps. How about they work for the American people? My patience is running thin.
Yeah. Well, many of those folks in the House are doing just that. It's just unfortunate that the GOP leadership team isn't.
Author of the new book, Putin's Gambit, from the Fox Business Network. Our friend Lou Dobbs is back with us. I just outlined in great detail the Ukrainian issue of influence and real collusion. Then, of course, you got the British intel dossier. And Comey wanted to pay the guy with false information, and he was paying people for the information. But that's not what we hear about. What do you make of the double standard?
The double standard is more than that, I think, Sean, by a long measure. This is an effort to subvert the administration of President Donald Trump. It is nothing less. It is an effort by the deep state to roll over a duly elected president and a legitimate government and to break the will of the American people. This is no longer about Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals. This is about a full-on assault by the left, the Democratic Party, to absolutely carry out a coup d'etat against President Trump, aided by the left-wing media. There's no the suggestion there's collusion between Trump and the Russians when we have absolute evidence of collusion between the Clinton Foundation, Secretary of State Clinton, and the Russians. I mean, this,
with
my
real
God,
money.
What does it take?
I don't know what it takes, but we've had 125 deep state leaks in 126 days. Every one of them, I would say, needs to be investigated for being a felony. You see, I think the only way this works is the deep state gets purged. Number one, Obama holdovers get purged. That still has not happened. The next thing is the laws of the country that apply to every American watching us now, Lou, need to apply to Hillary, need to apply to Comey, need to apply to Attorney General Lynch, and anyone else who leaked information within the deep state. If we don't hold them accountable, then it never stops.
You're exactly right. And by the way, the evidence is recent history. Over the course of the last month, we have watched those leaks accelerate, in point of fact, from the West Wing, the White House itself, instead of abate. And we have a Justice Department. Where is Attorney General Jeff Sessions? This is the time for the Attorney General to stand up and say this is not going to be tolerated, and this is what is going to occur. We're opening investigations into the Clinton Foundation, to Uranium One, and 20% of uranium production that was transferred ultimately to the Russians.
Well, why,
I mean,
Lou?
that's
where
collusion.
is it? But the question is, I don't know any other antidote than to purge the deep state, to apply the law equally. And if you don't, then you're giving license for all of this to continue.
You know, I do think we should, as you say, apply the law equally, but just to apply the law randomly to Democrats would be such a massive improvement, an order of magnitude better than what we have now. We have President Trump being investigated by a special counsel, and there isn't even a crime called collusion. Bob Mueller doesn't have any basis in legal...
we're going to have investigative creep. He's going to use Hillary's attorney to go further and further and set perjury traps.
Do you know what, Sean? It's interesting to hear the left-wing national media's narrative changing. This is going to be, quote-unquote, the new normal for 2 or 3 years as the Trump administration is investigated. They're actually saying that.
4 years, Lou. 4. It'll be 4.
I think you're right. But it should be stopped here.
All right, Lou Dobbs on our sister network, the Fox Business Network, every night, 7 Eastern.
Joining me now, Fox News contributor Rachel Campos-Duffy, attorney and political analyst Gail Trotter. Rachel, by the way, with the splendid Arizona horizon behind her, that looks like it might be Camelback Mountain there in the background. Anyway, I know you think I'm being a little harsh on the speaker just because he assured everyone dozens of times he had the votes, and then when they were necessary, he failed. Tell us what you think, Rachel.
Look, here's the deal. First of all, everyone likes Paul Ryan in the House conference, and I can tell you that because I know people in that conference.
Okay.
The Republican Party is like that loud Latino Italian family that has all their fights out in the open, and I think the process is healthier and more transparent for it. And I think in the end we're going to get a better bill.
I think he's I'm sure he's a lovely fellow. That's not the issue. He's incompetent. He hasn't ever achieved anything in Congress. He's never passed significant legislation. He's been there for 18 years. He's been there almost 2 years as Speaker, and he's still.
Listen,
what do you say?
Budget reform wasn't even a conversation among Republicans until Paul Ryan came. He's a thought leader in the party. But let me just say this. The Democrats are like that family that looks united. They never fight, but underneath is all this dysfunction. They rig their elections. They scheme against Bernie Sanders.
Who would want to fight with the likes of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi? Would you really want to get that icky? I mean, come on.
Our bill, they're going to come back. This is not the end of the game. They're going to come back with a better bill.
Who's going to be the Speaker when they do? Because this one isn't getting it done.
Paul Ryan will be the Speaker, Lou. Nice try. You know, Paul Ryan will still be the Speaker.
I mean, it's great to cheer him on, but so far the result has been crickets. What do you think, Gail?
Well, Lou, I think Rachel is exactly right that Paul Ryan is your typical D.C. thought leader, and he's not a do leader. And we saw a perfect example of that this week. You might remember when we were talking about the replacement for Speaker Boehner, that Paul Ryan had to be persuaded to be the Speaker. And I think that should have given everybody a clue right there that he was not up for the job. And I'm not trying to be too harsh on Paul Ryan. Certainly he's a good man, but he was not able to deliver. He let the president down this week. He let Americans down this week. And we had many ways that we could have addressed the health care crisis in our country, but Paul Ryan was unable to deliver the goods for the president this week.
The Speaker of the House is the most unenviable job in America. It's like herding cats. There are 30 Freedom Caucus guys. Guess what? He has to also satisfy all the other, 400 members of the House.
Well, let me throw out somebody. How about this? Take the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, Congressman Mark Meadows. Take the head of the conference, Congressman. Let me finish. Take the head of the conference. Bring Walker in. Bring in Jordan, also a member of the Freedom Caucus. I mean.
No one will get behind them.
I'm sorry?
No one will get behind them.
No, that's not true. That's absolutely false.
The Freedom Caucus will.
The Freedom Caucus will be able to make the Republicans hold to the promises that gave them the majority of the House, the majority of the Senate, and then the presidency when no one thought that Hillary Clinton could be defeated. So you should go with proven leaders like that who were able to stand on principle despite the fact that there was so much pressure against them. They will be able to deliver real health care reform for the American people.
Really? Because the amendments that the Freedom Caucus wanted to add to this bill would have guaranteed that this bill would have been killed, dead, on arrival at the Senate. It would not have passed the reconciliation standards.
It didn't even get to arrival. It was dead.
That's right. They should have passed. But Lou, they should have passed the bill as it was right now and let the Senate for once do their job.
That was Obamacare the first time when we had the House pass something and Senate pass something.
They could have had amendments.
And it was not what was promised. And I think we're seeing the fruit of that strategy now.
What do you think? What do you think of President Trump's view that when Obamacare explodes or implodes, that'll be the time for a bipartisan effort and real reform in health care legislation can take place?
He's actually right. And I'll tell you, the dirty little secret in Washington, D.C. is that the Democrats wanted this bill to pass because they didn't want to have responsibility for Obamacare
You
anymore.
get the last quick word, Gail.
Well, the Democrats wanted this to pass because it would not repeal Obamacare. So Obama and his party would have been victorious taking over the economy.
Gail, thank you. Rachel, thank you. You're both terrific as always.
Tremendous success. You look at our job numbers. You look at what's going on at the border, as we discussed before. You look at what will be happening. You're going to see some incredible numbers with respect to the success of General Mattis and others with the ISIS situation. The numbers are staggering, how successful they've been, the military has been. We have to get back to running this country really, really well. We've made tremendous progress in the last 100 and some odd days. Tremendous progress.
All right, that was the president earlier today at a press conference with the president of Colombia, detailing just some of the successes his administration has had since taking office. By the way, you won't hear that on the mainstream media, but as I mentioned in my opening monologue tonight, there are 5 significant forces that are trying to defeat this president and take him down. The deep state, they're the worst. The destroy Trump propaganda media, they're the second worst. Democrats unhinged, they're next. Establishment Republicans, weak, they're next. And then kind of the never-Trumpers. But President Trump, he's fighting back, calling out what he is saying is a political witch hunt. Joining us now with reaction, former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski from the Fox Business Network, Lou Dobbs. I've never seen anything like this. The most dangerous to me is the deep state, because I've never seen leaks like this. I've never seen unmasking like this, especially in the political years, up 600% from years prior.
I think that's largely correct. I think that the enabling rhinos, the established Republicans, who are frankly enabling the deep state and even the left, represent perhaps even a greater danger to the president. It's a danger he's recognizing. Corey Lewandowski rejoining this circle around this president is a helpful and hopeful sign of better things to come for the president. He has around him people who are not taking every pain, every effort, every opportunity to defend him, to attack those attacking the president. And as you and I have discussed, this communications department is led by people who seem like they've never been in the business before. But even at that, they should have.
I would throw in, even if it's just on a volunteer basis, to get real control, which I think the president deserves. And by the way, and this is not to dismiss anybody. I know people are working hard. A lot of them are gulping water. These attacks are probably consuming 80% of people's day. But Mike Huckabee, Newt Gingrich, helping, organizing, getting the agenda moving. They've been with him, though, from the beginning. They have been doing a lot, I think, as you well know. But I mean more involved. Even more. But the idea that this president has a communications department that isn't jumping at opportunities to attack the left, to attack the deep state, and to defend and promulgate this president's agenda just drives me nuts. You said it 2 nights ago. It's war. You and I get nuts over the same things. Corey, do you like the idea, maybe some help, because 80% of the time seems to be distraction, attack, reaction, attack, maybe guys like Mike, Newt Gingrich, helping to sort of reorganize in that sense and do the fighting and let the people that are supposed to govern actually have time to do their job?
Sean, I think it's super important that those individuals who supported this candidate, Trump, and now President Trump, are out in public talking about what's really going on. What we've seen, actually, and no one wants to talk about this, is if you look at Trump's numbers in the states of Iowa, in the states of Ohio, in the states of Pennsylvania, his numbers are actually up amongst Republicans who voted for him last cycle. His numbers are higher by 8 points in Ohio today. They're higher than they were on Election Day in Iowa. His approval rating amongst Republicans is 80% in the state of Pennsylvania. And what that tells you is you have to fight back. Donald Trump was elected because he wants to change Washington. He needs the surrogates on television who can go out and push back against this false narrative that there's not anything getting done in Washington. The bottom line is, in the first 120 days, he has been more successful than most administrations have been done in 4 years. Listen, I think I'm like the only one, and me and Lou Dobbs, the only 2 people on this planet that actually report what he's actually done. Lou, let me throw this to you. You bet. Look at this special counsel appointed. Yep. And I'm going to put it up on the side of the screen. I put it up earlier. You know, 0 special counsels for Obama and you know, Hillary got a pass. Absolutely. And less than 4 months into the Trump administration's presidency, I mean, this is insane. Where is the evidence of a crime? Let's just start there. There is no evidence of a crime, yet we've got a special counsel. Hours and hours and hours of TV. Corey will give you the last word. Sean, Lou's exactly right. There is no evidence of anything wrongdoing. There's no evidence of collusion. There is no reason for this. The bottom line is it's a political witch hunt. It is not